In Australia, over 40,000 men and women are currently behind bars. They've shattered countless lives, destroyed families. Some have been responsible for unspeakable violence.
There are just some people that are just evil of heart.
She's just scary. She's just real scary.
Some people are born with just that evil gene.
If you think you've seen and heard it all, you haven't. The truth of life behind bars in some of Australia's highest security prisons, told by the people who know.
It's dangerous on a daily basis. It's life-threatening.
Stabbings, hangings, people getting their heads stomped on.
If I was dangerous when I went in, I was more dangerous when I came out.
This time on Australia's most dangerous prisoners, the cold-blooded sadistic murderer who filmed his appalling crimes. And the inmate described as Australia's most dangerous woman. She's kicked a pregnant nurse in the stomach and set herself alight.
Imagine lighting yourself on fire. It's crazy.
Also, what happened to a 17-year-old boy on his first night with two of the prison's most dangerous inmates is the stuff nightmares are made of.
As the door slammed, the officer said, "Have fun with him tonight, boys," and giggled their heads off and thought that was kind of funny.
Just beyond the outskirts of Sydney's inner west lies Campsie, 25 minutes from the city centre. This apartment block was relatively new back in 2016, when evil crimes were committed behind its walls. 27-year-old Derek Barrett raped, tortured and murdered 25-year-old Meng Mi Leng, known to her friends as Michelle.
It was a depraved and sadistic act committed by a man in a position of trust to Ms. Leng and in a place that should have been one of refuge and safety for her.
She would have been terrified, knowing that she was alone and that she was going to die.
After stabbing Michelle at home 31 times, Barrett took her naked body and threw it off a cliff.
He encapsulates a psychopath.
In 2017, Derek Barrett was sentenced to a maximum of 46 years. He's now locked up at Cessnock Correctional Complex, 150 kilometres northwest of Sydney. He's said to be finding his prison time very unpleasant.
Usually for rape and murder of a woman, it's not looked highly upon in jail, so he would no doubt be preyed upon in jail, in protective custody.
Casually dismissing his monstrous behaviour, telling a psychiatrist, "I lost everything because of a stupid weekend." So who is Derek Barrett, and why did he kill Michelle Leng?
He had a very unremarkable upbringing. He was bullied a lot because he was overweight. He said that affected him into his adulthood. He eventually found a job working in IT after studying at TAFE, but then lost his job. Michelle Leng arrived in Sydney in 2011 as an international student. She loved being in Australia. She was very social. She had made a lot of friends at university. She was very smart, just very bright and bubbly. They lived together in a small unit at Campsie, where she lived with her auntie, along with her auntie's husband, who was Derek Barrett. That's right. Michelle was brutally raped and murdered by her auntie's husband. He developed this obsession with Michelle while they were living together, setting up cameras in the bathroom directly on her while she was showering, which was basically used so that he could pleasure himself. His sexual perversion didn't end there. He was also recording his stepdaughter. He would sneak into her bedroom while she was fast asleep in bed, and just watch her and film her. In April 2016, Barrett's wife went away for work
leaving her husband at home with her daughter and niece. Early the next morning, Barrett seized the opportunity to fulfill his sadistic homicidal fantasies.
He walked into her bedroom with a large hunting knife and Michelle was on her bed. He was advancing towards her. She was rejecting him, telling him, what are you doing? Get out of my room. He's overpowered her and tied up her hands and her wrists and put gaffer tape over her mouth, set up cameras around the room and proceeded to rape her, took very close pictures of her genitalia as well.
Of the 13 photos he took, one showed Michelle's terrified face.
He raped her before stabbing her over 30 times.
Michelle's lifeless body remained inside the apartment for more than 24 hours. In the early hours of Monday morning, Barrett takes the lift to the car park.
He put her body, Michelle's body, in the boot of his car and drove up to the Central Coast.
Here he is at 3:37 a.m. at a petrol station, casually buying drinks. 4 hours later, he arrives at Munmora State Conservational Area on the Central Coast. He goes to Snapper Point Blowhole, carrying Michelle's naked body covered in black plastic. He throws her off the cliff, landing in the water more than 20 meters below. He then takes photos of the cliffs and ocean.
There were some walkers that were going down to the blowhole and he said to them not to go down there. It's not a good day to go down there.
An hour later, Michelle's body is spotted in the water and police are called.
Police are yet to identify the woman. Homicide detectives have established a crime scene at Snapper Point amid fears that the woman had suffered multiple stab wounds.
The woman I would describe as an Asian female, aged between 20 and mid-30s.
That evening, his wife returns home. Concerned no one has seen or heard from Michelle for a few days, she and Barrett report her missing. Michelle's DNA is collected, and her family's worst fears are confirmed.
Police say the victim was 25-year-old Chinese student Ming Mai Leng, and she had suffered stab wounds. Detectives have released security pictures of her shopping in Sydney's Pitt Street Mall on Thursday last week.
Police released all of this CCTV in the hopes someone would come forward.
Derek Barrett was called as a witness.
During the interview, they were presenting more and more evidence, which included CCTV of his car that was at the National Park. He denied it was his car. The towers had actually pinpointed his phone being in the area.
Police seized Barrett's phone and found deleted videos of Michelle showering and sleeping, and recent, even more explicit photos.
He told police that he was in a relationship with her. I think the auntie couldn't believe, no one could really believe that.
Barrett was charged with murder, kidnapping, and 3 counts of committing an act of indecency.
Michelle Leng's distraught mother, supported in court by the wife of the man accused of fatally stabbing her daughter more than 30 times.
He received a maximum sentence of 46 years, at the high end for a guilty plea. But it's what happens next that shocks and baffles everyone. In April 2016, Derek Barrett tortured, raped and murdered his wife's 25-year-old niece, Michelle Leng. He took sexually explicit photos and videos of his horrific crimes. And more than 3.5 years later, those videos are discovered in the most unlikely circumstances.
This lady, she went to go visit her elderly mother that lived at Strathfield, which is a few kilometres away from Campsie, from where Michelle and Derek had lived. This elderly woman had this USB in her hand, and her daughter came over and was looking at the USB and thought, okay, this is very strange, looked at the USB and thought it was a snuff film, just because of the sexual nature and brutality of what she found on the USB.
9 videos and 13 photos taken on the 22nd of April 2016, showing Michelle Lang naked, bound and gagged, being raped and sexually assaulted by Derek Barrett over and over again.
Police quickly established that it was Derek Barrett's USB. This elderly woman, she has dementia, so she hasn't been able to shed any light as to how she came across the USB.
Barrett went back to court for multiple counts of aggravated sexual assault. He was sentenced to a further 20 years, raising his non-parole period to 37 years.
And the judge at the time, she resentenced him for that separate charge. She said if I had this in my possession, he would have received a life sentence.
Inside Cessnock Correctional Centre, Barrett is attending counselling and is taking antidepressants.
He's absolutely in denial about what happened and what he did to Michelle, and he's devoid of any sympathy or empathy to what he did to her.
Telling prison officers he didn't want to do it. It was one bad episode, and he's not a psychotic killer. He was employed, working 5 days a week.
He has lost that job in jail. He was unemployed on the outside, now he's unemployed on the inside as well.
Barrett needs to undergo a number of steps before he reforms.
I would think that someone that doesn't take responsibility for their actions or show any remorse can't be rehabilitated until they make an admission to their crimes.
Derek Barrett won't be eligible for parole until October 2052. With more than 40% of Australia's inmates returning to prison within 2 years of release, it's unusual for criminals to spend all their time in one correctional centre. But the code is similar throughout. You stick with your own kind. When Graham Alford did his time, he mixed with other bank robbers.
There is hierarchical order in prisons, and depending on what you're charged with and what your crime is, where you slot on the hierarchy, pedophiles, or as rock spiders as they used to be called, were the lowest of the low.
There's like a class in the criminal, in the mindset. There's certain family values that supersede crimes, you know? And people take that very seriously. Like, you can't just touch a kid and get away with it.
Child sex offenders are kept in a separate wing for their own protection.
So when people are protected, they're basically put into the same section with other like-minded or similar offenders. Rapists and child offenders in one wing, there are no main inmates. There's no inmates from other wings because they will try to kill them. So they're around and they sit there discussing their crimes. What did you do to such and such? How you got this? And they brag about what they did to certain kids.
Pedophiles are segregated. They're generally sent to the same prison, so they mix with each other. Not sure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's necessary to segregate them, otherwise they're going to get bashed or killed.
Brett Collins from Justice Action believes everyone deserves a second chance.
People who are charged with sex offences inside prison, they have such a hard time. They have access to very little sports, or access to other activities, because otherwise prisons attack them.
Not everyone agrees in prison, it seems. There are always two sides to every story.
Any trim will tell you, when you go to jail, all the cushy jobs and everything are given out to pedophiles. They always get the good jobs because they're deemed as easier to control. You look upstairs and there's a bunch of pedophiles all on the computers up there, and I don't know, their massage chairs or whatever they're doing up there, getting this preferential treatment and making food and the interacting with the officers and you know, sharing lunches and stuff with the prison officers. The preferential treatment that the sex offenders get is another slap in the face.
The pedophile food's different. They get like nicer food. They have like little fucking barbecues and shit. They get together, they hang out. It's a very different atmosphere in those wings.
Russell Manser believes putting paedophiles together is like throwing fuel on a fire.
I was a bank robber, right? Us bank robbers talk about bank robbery. Drug smugglers talk about drug smugglers. They're your people, they're your tribe. Pedophiles hang out with pedophiles. Let me tell you something now. Pedophiles talk about what they do to children together. That is the perfect breeding ground for a pedophile ring. You'll never come across a jail that's got 800 bikies together. That will never happen because they're deemed too dangerous.
Men's and women's prisons across the country house inmates who are considered a danger on the outside. And then there's the few who are just as dangerous inside. This is Rebecca Butterfield. Her sentence began in minimum security at the Emu Plains Correctional Facility in Western Sydney. But her stay was extended and she was upgraded to maximum security after committing a deadly crime behind bars. No one would have guessed she would have gone from bad to worse to become one of Australia's most dangerous and feared prisoners.
I lived in House 5 with Rebecca Butterfield.
Emu Plains Correctional Facility is for women and their children. Each house sleeps 10 to 12 women who do their own cooking and cleaning.
The Rebecca Butterfield I met and got to know was quite nondescriptive. She was quiet, maybe mid-20s. She was a bit overweight, which is quite a common side effect from taking a lot of medication when you're in prison.
The women work. Many held jobs at the prison's dairy farm until it was closed in 2016. It used to supply milk to prisoners throughout New South Wales.
I think the community thinks when we receive inmates, we lock them away into a cell and that's the only dealings that we have with them. On a daily basis, we are constantly interacting with inmates regularly, whether that be inmates in the general public of a centre or behavioural inmates, mental health inmates.
Psychiatrist Dr. Richard First assessed Butterfield back in 2000 after a particularly violent assault.
Her initial serious offending was an offence against a taxi driver in Orange in 1997, I believe stabbing him in the arm when he asked her to pay the fare. And then in 2000, there was a malicious wounding with intent GBH for a neighbour who tried to intervene when she was self-harming. And during that time, there was no indication to me that there was a major psychotic illness such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. The main issues seemed to be more impulsivity and aggressive tendencies and self-harming tendencies.
No one had an inkling of what was to come. But her fellow inmate, Kat Armstrong, could sense all was not well with Rebecca Butterfield.
She'd had a very troubled childhood. She was sexually assaulted as a child. In conversations that I shared with her about our similar backgrounds, I could tell that she was a very, very traumatised young woman, that jail was only exacerbating her trauma.
On the 7th of May 2003, Rebecca had been to the nurse asking for further medication. She was refused. She returned to her unit, which had its own kitchen and carving knives. Up next on Australia's Most Dangerous Prisoners, the frenzied attack that left one female inmate dead.
I believe 33 stab wounds were inflicted on the victim.
And we tracked down the most notorious group of murderers whose crime shocked a nation.
These guys were just scum. They were shitbags. And they looked like shitbags.
It's May 2003, and inmate Rebecca Butterfield is not in a good frame of mind. But what happened that day would change her life and rob another inmate of hers.
He was crocheting in the unit, and when the other resident came back, she basically locked the door, obtained a knife, and stabbed her to death. I believe 33 stab wounds were inflicted on the victim. There's no provocation at all. Like this, they were friends. Like they were friends for a good year or so before that.
When asked why she did it,
she said, "I told you I needed my medication."
The 2003 murder got her a 12-year manslaughter sentence in maximum security at Silverwater Women's Correctional Centre.
The experts who gave evidence in her case in 2004 were unanimous in saying that she had a personality disorder with borderline antisocial features.
I don't believe Rebecca Butterfield could rehabilitate in prison because using medication and lots of medication to bomb somebody out, it's a numbing effect.
Prisoners are 9 times more likely to be taking antipsychotics than the rest of us, twice as likely to be taking antidepressants, and 4 times as likely to be taking medicines to treat addictive disorders.
You just get drugged up and pushed to the side.
When Rebecca was sent to Silverwater Correctional Centre, Bella Gale was a prison officer.
She was like, it's like Hannibal Lecter. She looked at me and smiled. I was like, who the fuck is that? And they go, that's Rebecca Butterfield. They talked about her like this crazy woman.
In Silverwater, her behaviour became more violent.
She'd be headbutting the wall. She'd be trying to pull bits of her skull out. She'd be like ripping out her veins when she cut them. Like she would do horrendous self-harm in a way that you'd never believe. And I think she's just desensitized to pain because of all the years of self-harm. I mean, it's not normal to headbutt a wall until your skull cracks and then you go.
Rebecca is erratic. She kicked a pregnant nurse in the stomach and attacks inmates and guards with weapons she's fashioned out of plastic. And she set herself alight.
Imagine lighting yourself on fire. It's crazy. She was insane, but she never played up when I was there. So I don't know if it's got to do with me. Maybe I was lucky, possibly. I talked to her like I talk to you, hey man, how's your crocheting? What'd you have for lunch?
Butterfield was considered too dangerous to be released in 2015, when her manslaughter sentence ended.
Rebecca Butterfield has told us that when she gets out, she'll kill again. She voiced thoughts of chopping her stepmother's head off and eating her. It's pretty horrific for someone to say that after all these years in jail, and gives me no reassurance at all.
Rebecca agreed that she wasn't well enough to be released and was transferred to Long Bay Hospital, where she remains.
From all accounts, I'm hearing that she's doing really well. I'm hearing that she's actually working in the cafe over at the forensic ward. I would happily drink a coffee from Rebecca. It wouldn't be a problem. Yeah. If I saw her making it in front of me at the cafe.
Oh yeah, Rebecca Butterfield is 100% a dangerous person, and she's exactly where she belongs. I would not trust that woman anywhere else. She's exactly where she belongs.
Life inside prison will always be a dangerous place. And it's not just the constant threat of physical violence. For inmate Russell Manson, his prison experience turned him from a petty criminal to a life of crime and drug abuse. Prison is overwhelmingly filled with young men. In Australia, 93% of the prison population are male, and more than half of them are under 35. Russell Manson was just 17 when he was sent to an adult jail for the first time.
I went before a magistrate at Bajura Children's Court because I stole a Porsche, and the judge sentenced me to 12 months and stipulated to be sent in an adult jail to deter me from future reoffending.
The story of what happened to him on his first night is the stuff of nightmares.
We were strip searched by 3 men, all sorts of sexual innuendo and comments and that by the officers. And then they never turned up with a mattress, threw the mattress on the floor, And there was a set of bunk beds in there. One bloke was on the bottom bunk, one bloke was on the top bunk. And as the door slammed, the officer said to the two guys in the cell, "Have fun with him tonight, boys," and laughed and giggled their heads off and thought that was kind of funny. So anyway, sort of throw some sheets on the bed, and I'm sitting there and I could see the bloke on the bottom bunk, and he lifted up a sheet and he revealed he had an erection, and he said, "Come and do something with this." And then the one on the top bunk said to me, "There's the easy way and the hard way, mate," you know. And both of them sexually assaulted me on the first night in prison, both orally and anally, and I just slept all night, you know, just in tears and obviously in pain, and it was a commonplace there.
Russell Manser told an officer of his rape experience, and his life in prison became worse. He was offered a hit of heroin and took it to help numb the pain.
I was a kid that was severely traumatised. And I don't care, he said, "This will make you feel better," and he gave me a shot of heroin on that. Anyway, as I was vomiting, because one of the effects of heroin is you're going to vomit. I was on my hands and knees vomiting in the toilet. That's when he raped me, when I was vomiting.
We think it's very unwise for a person to complain about being raped in prison, because then the managers expect you to name the person who did it, and then you're in a situation where you become not only somebody who's a victim of rape, but you'll become a dog, and that's the worst epithet to have expressed to you in prison. So we actually advise people very carefully not to inform to the authorities and make complaints to the authorities.
You know, that's a very painful place. And all that bravado and that you see from the boys coming home and your mates coming home from jail, that's all bullshit.
February the 2nd, 1986. A beautiful summer's day in Sydney, forever marred by one of the darkest, most savage crimes Australia has ever seen. Anita Cobby grew up in Blacktown, in Sydney's western suburbs. She had everything to live for, a rewarding career and the sort of looks that turned heads and won beauty pageants. Anita was brutally raped and murdered, and her body was mutilated in a crime that shocked and horrified a nation. These 5 barbaric killers were found guilty of abduction, sexual assault, robbery, and murder. They're among the lowest of the low inside. The ringleader, John Raymond Travers, is infamous inside and outside prison. Here he is in 1985, the year before the murder, appearing in a Catholic education video, proudly shrugging off his criminal behaviour.
Just taking off the richer for the poorer, like Robin Hood. I don't give it out because I don't get enough.
He became addicted to drugs and alcohol at a young age, and his mum was compelled to put him into state care because he was too wild to manage.
John Travers just is one of the most evil people that was born evil. I don't think there's any redemption, any remorse.
He's considered so bad, he's on non-association orders from the rest of the killers. He's locked up in Western New South Wales in the maximum security Wellington Correctional Centre and will never be released.
He's in segregation because I think nearly every person in the world would like to kill him. He's actually shackled quite a lot of the time. They're worried that he'll try and make a break for it because he's got nothing to lose. I know he writes letters to judges and Supreme Court judges saying, I've done my time, get me out of here. They'll probably be just being put in the bin, you know, because he's got no legal recourse.
The other 4 murderers, brothers Les, Michael and Gary Murphy, and Michael Murdoch, were sent to the maximum security section of the Goulburn Correctional Complex, about 2 hours' drive from Sydney. And just like John Travers, they too will never be released. The details of their crime were so horrendous, it left a lasting emotional impact on everyone trying to bring them to justice.
One guy, admitted that he couldn't have sex with his wife for after 2 years after, because she was naked, and it just, that imagery.
But there's still someone who believes one of the Murphys is innocent.
I mean, I fought hard because, I believed in his innocence, and I still do to this day.
The story of a young woman abducted, gang raped and murdered is still remembered today as one of Sydney's worst ever crimes. On the 2nd of February 1986, 26-year-old Anita Cobby was a nurse working at a Sydney hospital. She'd finished work and was taking the train back to Blacktown. At the same time, John Travers and his mates were cruising the streets of Blacktown in a stolen car, getting drunk, taking drugs, and looking for trouble when they spotted Anita Cobby. Anita never made it home. Police were alerted, and it's not long before information starts rolling in.
It was residents here in Newton Road who say they heard a woman scream and saw her being dragged into an early model Holden by a gang of youths.
Reporter Mark Morey covered the story at the time, an event that still haunts him to this day.
They grabbed her, they took her to a paddock, they raped her, and then they slit her throat and left her to die in a paddock.
2 days after she went missing, Anita Cobby's body was found. The sickening brutality inflicted on the nurse was horrifying.
Anita is naked. She's almost been decapitated. John Travers, after he got back to the car for slitting her throat, he came back and he said, "I did me first one." So he was actually a serial killer in the making, and they stopped him by catching him.
Detectives are appealing to anyone who may have heard or seen anything in the Prospect or Blacktown station areas on Sunday night.
Police had to find the perpetrators before they struck again. Australians everywhere were fired up. It was a level of depravity we just hadn't seen before. Police were tipped off about a stolen car Travers and the Murphy boys had been driving around in. Added to that, Michael Murphy is already one of Australia's most wanted men.
Michael Murphy escaped from Silverwater Jail last December while on works release. He was serving 24 years for armed robbery.
It took 3 weeks before a tip-off led to the arrest of 3 suspects.
Police were tipped off that the Murphys were hiding out in a home unit at Glenfield. Our news crews were on the scene within minutes as more than 50 police from Tactical Response, SWAT, Armed Hold-Up and Dog Squad units assembled.
John Raymond Travers, Les Murphy and Michael Murphy are arrested for stealing a car. Police knew they had the killers. They just needed more evidence to make the charges stick.
There were crooks giving these guys up. So there's some secret witnesses that still haven't been revealed to this day. That's how they got caught. They took them back to Blacktown Police Station.
Word quickly spread. The suspects were in custody.
I think there was a mob outside of there, 500-600 strong. It was like wildfire. They were rocking the police car. The crowd were ready to tear them limb from limb.
People holding placards let their feelings be known and called for the reintroduction of the death penalty.
Travers and his fellow thugs had been in and out of jail since they were kids.
These guys were just scum. They were shitbags. And they looked like shitbags.
Travers was known to be cruel to animals from a young age, having sex with them before slitting their throats. Travers believes he's going to get off. He spills the beans about the murder to his aunt, who's wired up by the cops. And he divulges his escape plans. Now police have the evidence they need to convict him of theft, abduction, and murder.
All 5 of the men charged with murder are here.
If you wanna kill, you come here, kill us!
And they never showed any remorse. In court, they were giggling, you know. You could feel everybody in that courtroom had contempt and hatred for him, and they just smirked.
Look at the one in there laughing.
Coming up next, the confession of one of the most hated men in the country. True or false?
We started saying, you know, what happened? And he said, well, I don't know. We said, what do you mean you don't know? He said, I weren't there.
It was the murder trial of the decade, and in the thick of it was a young lawyer who needed protection just to talk with her client, Gary Murphy. Lee Johnson witnessed their life behind bars when she acted as Gary's lawyer. She believes that the story is not as straightforward as everybody thinks.
You know, he's incredibly uneducated. So we started saying, you know, what happened? And he said, well, I don't know. We said, what do you mean you don't know? He said, I weren't there.
The other 4 gang members wrote statements confirming Gary was not there on the night.
Each of them gave us a signed statement saying that Gary was not there for that incident. So I said, why did you sign the confession? He went, stop him from bashing me, love. He'd had his jaw fractured in 2 places on 2 sides of his face when he went to jail.
Council applied for medical treatment for the Murphys. Both had severe cuts to the face and claimed the injuries were inflicted after arrest. But police told the court the men had resisted and put up a fight.
I find it hard to even judge the police on that. I don't want to say they were thugs, but I think they thought they were doing the right thing. I mean, I fought hard because, I believed in his innocence, and I still do to this day.
So you imagine what those detectives who came across her in the paddock in real life. One guy admitted that he couldn't have sex with his wife after 2 years because she was naked, and it just, that imagery. So you see that imagery, and then you see the arsehole in court, and you can't be objective.
Details of the torture inflicted on Anita Cobby were reported by the media, and word spread through the prison network. Inmates cornered Michael Murphy and gave him some of his own medicine.
When he got into prison soon after, the guys got him, they had a piece of clear plastic tubing, and they put barbed wire in it.
I'll leave what happened next to your imagination.
Prisoners in New South Wales are not allowed to talk publicly. They're not allowed to talk to journalists, not allowed to make phone calls to journalists, not allowed to give interviews. Bizarrely, they're allowed to write letters as long as it's not for publication. They are cut off from talking to the outside world about what might be their concerns.
After 10 years behind bars, Travers tried to escape.
Notorious criminal John Travers under heavy guard this afternoon after allegedly trying to break out of a prison van on the freeway north of Mittagong.
They were hated, those Murphy brothers, particularly in Travers.
And in prison, being hated could cost you your life. In July 2019, Gary Murphy found out just how much he's still despised.
A month ago, he was beaten within an inch of his life. It's believed he was attacked by up to 8 inmates, who he refuses to name due to fears of retribution.
For the first time in over 30 years, the public received a rare glimpse of Gary Murphy, and it may be the last, because he's in jail until he dies.
You hope that they're copying hell in prison even now.
Anita's former husband, John Cobby, has been watching from the sidelines since February the 2nd, 1986, waiting for vengeance.
I'm so surprised that the hard, heavy boys haven't killed them all.
In February 2019, Michael Murphy died of cancer in Long Bay Hospital. He was 66.
Well, that's one down. 4 to go.
Coming up next on Australia's most dangerous prisoners, shower hawks sex and prison logic.
If you become known as a cat, as a passive sexual partner, that's a big put down.
Hard men, and they said sex in jail isn't considered real sex.
For the 40,000 men and women currently behind bars in Australia, the natural sex urge doesn't diminish. But it does become far more dangerous. The number of people locked up for sexual offences in Australia has almost doubled in the last 10 years. We hear stories about sex being rampant in prisons, and according to those in the know, it's true.
Most times people who are in jail are about 30, 31 years old. So, you're talking about active males jostling together who don't have much space and have very little privacy.
Justice Action advocate Brett Collins was a 23-year-old married man with a 3-month-old son when he was locked up for armed robbery. He learned the hard way how to navigate the unwritten rules of sex behind bars.
But you've got people who are normally sexually active who are then in a single-sex society. Now, that causes tensions, immense tensions. So it gets worked through in different ways, but it's all hidden. So it's not openly done. There's some people who do identify themselves as being sexually available, but gee, they get such a hard life. They are seen as being not of high standing. So issues of standing in prison are really important.
If you're not of high standing, you're called a cat.
If you become known as a cat, somebody as a passive sexual partner, that's a big put down. And so I'm seen as being somebody who can be abused by others. You have to be careful of your credit, of your reputation, about how you deal with others. Other prisoners are watching all the time because for a whole range of reasons, sometimes you have to be really wary to make sure you haven't disturbed someone.
There are places in prison to avoid and to tread carefully. You'll need to watch out for shower hawks. They're ready, always ready, to swoop.
In the toilets, there are opportunities there where people are in the showers. There are always areas where there isn't surveillance, so there's no closed-circuit television. So, these opportunities are there, and some prisoners know where those spaces are, and they avoid them. If they feel vulnerable, they avoid them. You can't really defend yourself against a determined attack. That's the fact, you cannot.
Former prison officer Bella Gall has seen it all.
As far as sex in jail is concerned, a few of the boys said to me that they do it, and these were fully straight, hard men, and they said sex in jail isn't considered real sex. We're just using each other to get each other off. And I'm like, he goes, okay, so what do you do after? He goes, he goes, when you leave jail, it's behind you. I said, brother, it's not fucking behind you. The only thing behind you is a dude. I said, you're not leaving it behind you. Think about that shit. At least I would.
There are 116 prisons across Australia, home to everyone from petty criminals to the worst of the worst. Thankfully, Anita Cobby's killers, John Travers, Gary and Les Murphy, and Michael Murdoch, will never walk the streets again.
John Travers is one of the most evil people. How he got these other guys to follow, he's not a charismatic person. He was able to find some very, very stupid people just to follow him, some drug-fucked idiots. And they went and took the life of a wonderful person. And he was the ringleader.
As for Rebecca Butterfield, her prison sentence ended 3 years ago, but the New South Wales Supreme Court extended her continuing detention order.
The lack of any obvious provocation and the intensity with which she can act in terms of violence that can be lethal violence does make her one of the most dangerous women in Australia. And the lack of any clear understanding of why that's happened on a number of occasions, despite a lot of therapy, is equally worrying.
Derek Barrett is without a doubt one of the most sadistic murderers this country has ever seen. A man who took pleasure from restraining and degrading his innocent victim. These are the faces of some of Australia's most dangerous prisoners. Thankfully, they're all behind bars. Justice has been served.